I've got a few minutes while I'm walking to the SkyTrain station. And I'm coming back from the hospital, so basically I've been thinking a bit about time. And one of the things is, eventually, if you have something to say, you have no more time to say it. So I'm going to talk about something that I figured out, actually in a Reddit conversation about the Site C Dam. And one of the most common arguments being used that I see online for people to willingly accept this $16 billion boondoggle is that the economy and money matter and that we're going to need the energy. Now, this is fairly true in its own way, but it's a little bit off in certain key points. Money, and money is sort of important. It's the main accounting system we actually use to determine debt and who is apparently deserving of certain things. And with time, we've been able to at least agree that everyone deserves certain things, food, a lack of fear of being mugged, robbed, killed, stuff like that. It's got its uses. But it is still just a symbolic accounting system at the end of the day. There's an ancient story about, usually it's a king who gets isolated and gets separated from his people, his retinue. And this king comes across an old woman with a pot of beans. And he offers her lots of gold, whatever else, stuff he doesn't even have with him. And eventually he's hungry enough that he offers her half his kingdom just to eat. And she basically chews into him on that one. It's this is teach you a lesson. Because I imagine she knows that eventually he's going to find his people and be okay. But there's a key point there. The money's absolutely useless if you don't have the food. That's point one. The other point is, yes, we do need energy. We do require it. And this could be on multiple profound levels, not just the obvious stuff. But there's also the point there that how we get the energy is actually very, very important. It should be efficient. And the efficiency is not actually determined by the accounting system. Again, it's just symbolic. Conservation would be nice, but apparently that just isn't in human nature. Goddamn foolish apes. But the key point that people don't seem to get is efficiency. Long-term efficiency, when it comes to the topic of energy, let's go to the source. The source is, except for gravitational effects and some of the radioactive elements that people in BC are not allowing to be used for an energy source, the source of all forms of energy is the sun. If we look here, all plant life is a biomass accumulator. Biomass is basically the concentrated energy of the sun coupled with chemicals and chemical bonding to create more complex compounds that store energy that can be released after the fact, later on. Our fossil fuels that we're so dependent on, that was all plant life originally. And it takes a long time to actually compress it, and a lot of the gravitational energy to actually turn it into that form. Okay, yes, there's an energy cost to going to solar. That's not even a thing. For the total amount of energy that's available on our freaking planet, which right now, as it stands, is where we're going to be stuck for our lifetimes, for the most part. And even if we get to the point where we're shipping off to other stars, or planets, whatever else, there's still going to be a bunch of us stuck here. Using plant life is the most functional way to actually harvest solar energy. we don't see the general accounting, and we don't account for the fact that plant life is the source of our food, our nourishment, the structure of our bodies themselves. That's why we're like at the top of the pyramid, because we're good at taking the energy that's been put together by plants and other animals and turning it into ourselves, into us. At this particular point in history, we've gone through 50% of the biomass available on the surface of the planet, either through burning it or through metabolizing it or turning it into our own structure. The human animal, the collective organism, is currently something like 36% of the mammal biomass on the planet. If we actually account for our domesticated species, whether food, pets, whatever else, that goes up to 96%. There's a bit of math that can go into that, and you know what? It's freaking disturbing. Really disturbing. Because unless we get rid of a whole bunch of us at once, which is not tenable, really not tenable, like we should not get to that point, we're dealing with one hell of a need for energy. And I mean energy that's like stored, and hopefully a surplus of it, on the surface of our planet. This is one of the reasons that Site C, the dam on the Peace River Valley in northern BC, is a really stupid idea. Because, yes, it will provide X amount of electricity. Not enough for this entire electrification that people are like looking at, but as a way to somehow stave off the effects of our overuse, overconsumption per capita at a greatly inflated population. That is besides the point. We should actually be conserving, and more to the point, we should be altering our lifestyles to allow for a more sustainable use of energy over time. That's not happening. The general understanding of how energy actually plays into the potential development of a conscious sapient civilization of any sort is all based on the amount of energy we harvest successfully from the sun. The type 1, type 2, type 3 civilizations. And we're not even close to the type 1. The big error that usually happens there is that for the measure of a type 1 civilization, the more plant life you have on a surface that is actually working towards your benefit, the closer you are to being that hyper-efficient civilization type. And our own best benefit is not the immediate gratification of our needs, desires, pleasures, whatever else. It's the long-term synergy of biodiversity, complexity, and sheer amount of biomass storing energy from the sun. This is like very, very basic stuff. I can't believe I actually feel the need to say it, but apparently some people miss this point. Okay. That is actually probably the main point I'm trying to get across, because this needs to actually be happening as a point in more of the discussion, more of the debate. We should not be looking at short-term economics as our primary driver. We should not be looking at the band-aid of electrifying our vehicles. We need to be actually looking at real sustainability. We have to get over our short-term focus on ourselves as being the be-all, end-all. Because the thing is, while we can push back as far as we want, as individuals, whichever age cohort we may be, we are mortal, finite, and will come to our individual ends. As a species, we have a lot more room, but we have to actively manage with an eye to that kind of scale, to that kind of time scale, and sheer volume and mass. If we don't somehow or another make the leap or the evolution to examining the world through that perspective, it's all over. And to be honest, any single member of the species who values themselves and their short-term goals over and above the continuance of the species is a pathogen. I hate to say that. I'm not going to advocate for eco-fascism or like shooting these people, but there you have it. Even after the Site C dam is theoretically finished and producing energy, it would still be worthwhile turning back the project, draining it, and making that valley an operant biomass accumulator again. Because if you actually want to play the accounting game, the cost of building a solar collector like that for organic purposes, it's a lot more than frickin' $16 billion, dude. Like, seriously, that is pretty wasteful, pretty stupid, and we have to get over it. Because, really, those plants, they're a token. Those plants are a token of energy. This tree above me, that's energy. And it's energy that's good for us on a basic evolutionary level. We are not designed to actually exist in a world of straight lines, hard concrete, and these abstract notions being applied to the world in a way that supersedes the reality of our substance. And it's time for me to get on the SkyTrain. But this is a good place to shut down. There's energy. And they're not mutually exclusive. Good night. Or day.